Hello, Goddess. Welcome back. This is Andrea with You Are Mind, Body, Soul. And in this space, I guide goddesses to bridge the mind, body, and soul through psychosomatic education, consciousness reconditioning, as well as alchemy and energetics. Welcome back for another beautiful conversation that will level up your feminine consciousness and help you to create more flow and authenticity in your life. What I wanted to do this month for the month of March as we transition out of the winter season and into the spring rapidly is really highlight some topics regarding the transitions and the interconnectedness of our masculine and feminine energy. And so today, I really want to highlight adrenal fatigue, dealing with stress, and how really focusing on those physical health and wellness aspects can really improve the relationship that you have with your feminine energy. Fall and winter are feminine seasons. They are slower, darker, which means that they are more internally focused. We are able to slow down, or we're forced to slow down, whether it be through snow days, through illness, the body processing diseases, or just the cold weather and less sunlight. There's really just a different flow and a different type of rhythm that the winter offers versus the more masculine seasons of the spring and the summer, which are more extroverted. They are more outward focused because it's warmer, it's hotter. People tend to be more energized. Well, the average person tends to be more energized and just open and kind of out there, connected and exploring. So it's on the outside, which is a more masculine energy. For me personally, being a Pitta Ayurvedic dosha, I find that the winter actually brings me a lot of balance because I have a lot of natural masculine energy and fire energy within me. And so that cool weather really stabilizes me. And this is something that I actually realized more in the recent years as I started to go into deeper levels of my inner work. So this video can also kind of be considered as a part two to This Is Why Feminine Women Live Longer, because these are just fundamental things that are grounded in the scientific biological facts that are really going to help to give us a very clear perspective on what we are working with when we are showing up for life and being conscious about it. Excuse me. So the first place I want to start with is talking about some of the signs and symptoms of adrenal fatigue, which is basically when your adrenal system and certain parts of your endocrine system are overworked. So when you are feeling like you have more stress and an above average level of stress, whether you are always stressed out or constantly working, constantly on the go, if you are experiencing burnouts, and these are my notes here, if you are experiencing a lot of burnout where you are forced to rest rather than resting at a time where you have scheduled it, if you are constantly getting sick, like more than 2 times a year, I would say that it's pretty average that someone that to get sick, twice, maybe 3 times a year, but anything more than that, you might want to consider looking at your stress levels. And also, before I go super deep into the topic, 2 things I want to say: that please consult your doctor. I am not a physician. Yes, I am bringing my background, my pre-medical background in psychology and molecular and microbiology, some of my experience in medicine. However, I am not a medical professional. So this is just my personal opinion and what has worked for me and what I have observed through my inner work, my practices, and my research. So that's one. And also, I wanted to remind you to please like this video if you are enjoying this free content. Please share the video so that other goddesses such as yourself can receive this information. And please subscribe and tap that notification bell so that you can get updated when I drop more dope content every Monday. And thank you for my new subscribers for being here. And thank you all for your loyal sharing of space with me in this YouTube tribe that we have going. It just fills me up so much. So, other symptoms that you have too much stress, energy, too much stress hormones in your body are going to be too much fear. So, irrational fears, always responding to the unknown and the unexpected automatically with fear. Any type of consistent anxiety or depression, feeling hopeless, okay? Issues with bloating, if you're always feeling like you have a lot of gas, you're holding a lot of water, okay, can be linked to your stress hormones and the chemistry in your body. If you are having a lot of salt cravings, sugar cravings, if you're having issues with weight loss, this can definitely be linked to the stress hormones in your body. If you have foggy brain, lack of mental clarity, if you are dealing with digestive issues, so any irritable bowel syndrome, I don't know why that's making me stutter. Irritable bowel syndrome can be linked to your stress levels. And honestly, this is something that I see in clients, women who have kind of normalized living with issues with their bowel, like this has become a normal thing. Or women, some of my clients, when I meet them, they are self-medicating, and they have normalized having a certain baseline level of anxiety, and also just normalizing overworking themselves. Also, I also want to say that there is a hyperactivity of stress hormones in your body that can be linked to all of these things. And we'll get to the spiritual and the energetic sources of all of these. But conversely, there are also symptoms if you don't have enough production of stress hormones in your body, which is less talked about. If your body is not producing enough cortisol, which is the primary stress hormone that we started to talk about in part 1 of This Is Why Feminine Women Live Longer. Cortisol, if you don't have enough cortisol in your body, it can show up also as frequently being sick, because when the body is sick, that is a form of stress on the immune system. And so cortisol naturally is going to be produced, and it sends signals throughout the body and the immune system to then start to produce those hormones and those neurochemicals to then fight disease. So it can go both ways. And spiritually, I'm feeling like there is also a source that is linked to that. And I'm going to try to remember to come back to an underactivity of stress hormones as we go through this video. And the reason that I decided to do this video, I'm just looking at my notes here. Okay, the reason that I decided to do this video as I go into higher and deeper levels of my feminine energy work is because I had this dawn of realization as this topic came to me, and I realized that most of the healing that I have done, the spiritual healing that I have done, was founded in my healing of my adrenal system. And that is because when I was younger, I had a lot of anxiety and depression. I was always in a state of fight or flight in my life. This is how I naturally responded to life. I was always in a state where I felt like I needed to defend myself and fight, whether or not it was showing up as outward anger or frustration, or whether it was being internalized as depression, which depression is anger internalized because you feel powerless to change your situation. This was wearing out my adrenals. I also was dealing with flight. So I would leave situations and instances with on the drop of a dime. And, I had unhealthy attachment mechanisms. And all of this was because of my adrenal systems. And when I really started to do my inner work around trauma, which I talk about a lot in the previous video that I dropped last week, it's the name of that video, How to Create Your Own Happiness. That video is really linked to what we're talking about today. I would say that that is an excellent place to get started with this whole topic and this whole journey that we are taking in March. And there's a lot of identity in how you are talking to yourself that's going to shape that. So when I first started to do my inner work surrounding trauma, I realize now that a lot of the methods that I have developed to really heal myself and that have also ultimately continued to level me up into my next stages of life consistently have many of them have been surrounded around adrenal work and managing my stress. And I just had this epiphany as I was creating the content for this video. So, the trauma that we have in our body can be linked, for me personally, it was linked from things that had happened to me in my past lives and the attachments that I had to soulmates and to karmic partners created a lot of baggage for me that I had to work through because I found that I was just repeating these patterns. A lot of my childhood coping mechanisms that I created in response to some of the trauma that I experienced as a kid, verbal abuse, physical abuse, abandonment issues. I really had to sit and work on my adrenal system through different forms, which I'll talk about in a few. Okay. And other relationship patterns. So, your trauma response as a woman, when you are working to increase your feminine energy, you want to be very aware of what you are doing with your drive and your willpower. So, what I am talking about is actually third chakra energy. It is your solar plexus chakra. This is the center of your will and of your drive energy. And this chakra is actually a masculine chakra. So, not necessarily saying that it's male dominant. We want to move beyond just the idea of masculine and feminine energy being separated by a clean and fine line. Because we are goddesses, we integrate both aspects of ourselves. So, the solar plexus chakra energy of being overdriven and having too much will power and will energy and not using it in a healthy and balanced way can really be taxing on your adrenal systems. Anytime, so these are energetic ways and ways in which you can check in with yourself. So there are the physical responses, that list that I went over regarding your health and your wellness, and these responses that you are having, such as being hyper driven, hyperdrive, feeling like you always have to be on the go, feeling like it's unsafe for you to rest and unsafe for you to relax, for fear of falling behind or for fear of losing something or having an attachment to productivity is really going to tax your adrenal system. So these behavioral actions and these energetic responses really tax our bodies biologically. Another way of recognizing, another behavior to recognize that will tax your adrenal system is going to be rapidly responding to things. So feeling like you are automatically reacting. So any kind of reactive behavior is a symptom of being too much in your masculine energy. And the consequences of that is that it's going to wear out your adrenal system. Okay. So if you are having challenging experiences or you feel like you are constantly coming up and you are finding friction in life consistently, it is probably because you are on autopilot. And one of the most powerful things that I did as I started to become dedicated to my inner goddess work and just challenging the status quo of my mindset around life was recognizing that I was in autopilot. And this was around the time that I graduated from college and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. And so my natural gut response was just to work myself to death. And I think that a lot of women, successful women and women that are still seeking success, get caught in that stage of their development, of their emotional development. And it happened to me. And it even came to the point with my inner work where I would break out of that cycle of that masculine driven, automatically responding pattern. And then I would just be like doing nothing. And so then I would revert to being overly feminine and overly relaxed. So essentially, what I'm trying to say is that there is a dance that occurs between your masculine and feminine energy that you really want to gain skill over. And there are a number of different things. And I will tell you, I'll get to that later. So I'll save that. Um, so let me have a sip of water. So if you feel like you always need to protect yourself from something or from someone, you are putting your body's defense mechanisms on high alert consistently. Okay. And there needs to be inner work done surrounding that. And of course, on yambs.co, I have courses that will help you with that. And also, I do incredible coaching, one on one coaching for women that are looking to transform their lives through the mental, physical, and spiritual practices. Before I forget, I also wanted to mention the aspect of not having enough cortisol. So, energetically, when I really feel into what that could be a function of, a woman that is not producing enough stress hormones in response to what is happening for life, I feel like this could be a result of someone who does not have a healthy sense of boundaries, a healthy sense of self and self identity. Because when you are well aware of who you are and showing up for life, confident in who you are, or at least secure, you're going to have a certain and natural level of immunity, natural immunity in the form of intuition. And this natural immunity in the form of intuition can show up in a manner in which you are aware, even if it's on just again, a gut level and intuitive level, because this hormonal system that we are talking about, the adrenals and how they are connected to the hypothalamus and how they are connected to the pituitary gland, these are ancient aspects of our physical makeup versus something like the prefrontal cortex, which is a newer aspect on the scale of, millions of years that we have existed as human beings. The brain in itself is a very old organ. And the organ of the brain has developed in many ways over millions of years. It didn't just happen yesterday. And I want to say that the hypothalamus is one of the oldest aspects of the brain. Although don't quote me on that. I actually should research. I actually want to research that. I'm just getting intuitive hits on this. So your intuition from a gut level, your instinct is going to give you natural immunity against certain situations in life. So putting yourself in harm's way, being in relationships of any sort where you are being taken advantage of can be a reflection of an underdeveloped natural intuition, an underdeveloped sense of boundary and sense of self. Because if you think about it, you can't really have or set boundaries around something that is not well defined. A boundary is a separation. It is a force, a barrier, or a border between your energy and other people's energy, where you are allowing certain things to come in according to your self-worth and self-awareness, and certain things that are not allowed in. So if you are always getting sick and you don't have boundaries, then there's a certain energetic thing that is missing. So you are always susceptible to things that you would not otherwise be susceptible to. So that's just something that I wanted to share. And that would be in the instance in which you don't have boundaries, you're always getting sick, like that kind of thing. And there are a lot of energetic things that you can do to support yourself through that. The 14-day Mind, Body, Soul Reset course is really powerful with helping to establish your physical health, as well as do a mental, physical, and spiritual reset. And I am going to be adding some new modules in the course. I won't be raising the price yet on the 14-day Mind, Body, Soul Reset course, but I am going to start to work on some new content because we are changing seasons. And for me personally, the springtime is the most important time for me to be cleansing my body, because I do have serious spring allergies now that I live in Connecticut. And so that's just me personally. So we would love to have you inside of that course. I'm going to be adding some incredible content, but it's full of great things already. Over 6 hours of really invaluable content that I have been curating through my personal practice for over a decade now. So I hope that you can join us there. Alrighty. So where we are, the need to accomplish and to perform is going to wear your adrenals out. And it will show up and manifest in many different ways. All right, so how can we improve our adrenal health? Okay, let's talk about that. Because again, when we are healing our adrenal glands and our HPA axes, we are healing our feminine energy. Masculine energy enjoys and revels in a good challenge. Masculine energy enjoys having to grapple with the challenges of life. And men are hormonally built to withstand stressful experiences, as well as experiences that require endurance and long-term consistency. Hormonally, they are built for that. A man can go and work an 8 to 12-hour job, and provide for his family and feel energized from that, because he is providing and he is giving. And he can do that for decades on end. And when he dies, he feels satisfied and accomplished with what he has created in life. A woman that is working to that extent, long hours for several years of her life, eventually she will start to change. Her biochemistry will start to change as she begins to age. And you can listen to more about that in the first video, part 1, on This Is Why Feminine Women Live Longer. I talk more about those changes that happen and how it affects our hair, skin, and nails, and what we consider to be beautiful as women. So you can look at that, but just know that this is not to say anything against being driven and being a high performance woman. Next week, we're going to talk about being a high performance woman. Okay, there's nothing against that. But what I'm saying is that you want to be mindful of how you are taking care of yourself, and you want to have elevated forms of self care. And when you make elevated forms of self care, let me make a little note here. When you are creating elevated forms of self-care, which I might end up making another video on, you are tending to yourself on not only spiritual levels, mental levels, but those physical, biological levels as well. So we have talked about the issue at hand, living through masculine dominant energy and the issues and how they show up in life. Now let's talk about how we can actually improve our feminine energy by just being mindful of what the science and the research is saying about having fatigue, being fatigued all of the time. So quality rest and sleep hygiene is something that's a really big deal. You want to have what I call sleep hygiene, and I do go into this more detail in the course. So that's simply just cutting out the electronics before you go to sleep. Okay. And maybe reading a book. I like to read books about dreams because y'all know that your girl has been trying to get her lucid dreaming on. And also lately, I've been working on my astral travel game as well, which has been very cool. And it has taken me into some new frontiers in my personal growth and spiritual realm. Okay. If you are drinking a lot of caffeine, if you need like more than 1 cup of caffeine a day, you might want to have a conversation with yourself about detoxing from caffeine or cutting it out or slowly weaning yourself off. If y'all were here in January, I don't know if there are any new followers since January, but if y'all were here with me in January, you know your girl was going through it. I was detoxing off of coffee through the whole month of January. Coffee, sugar, and I think like processed foods, and that was challenging. It was not easy, but I felt so good when I was detoxing off of caffeine. And, practicing cleansing regularly for over a decade in my life has already mentally primed me to be prepared for the resiliency that is required of discipline. So if we're going to use masculine energy for our benefit as divine goddesses, we want to know at what places do we enact and use our masculine energy. That's going to be discipline, disciplining yourself, disciplining myself, for example, off of caffeine so that I can really get a sense for my natural rhythms. It just felt for me, detoxing off of caffeine, like really allowing myself to connect with my natural flow and what I wanted to do and when I wanted to do it versus just being driven by this artificial stimulant. But nothing against caffeine, whether it be coffee or however you like to have your caffeine. Green tea is an excellent resource for caffeine. It's a great supplement for coffee, and it also does not stain your teeth. So you may even want to consider switching from coffee to a different caffeine alternative. And there are excellent caffeine alternatives, which also fit into some of the things that you can incorporate into your diet to help to heal your adrenal system. One of those things is actually coffee replacements. So coffee that's created from mushrooms are an excellent source of a replacement in caffeine, like natural caffeine from mushrooms. And there are a lot of great brands out there. I'm not currently taking any because I don't really do coffee like that. I'm definitely like a matcha girl. So I like to substitute when I really need like a cup of something from Starbucks. I will get my matcha. So you can do that, try that. But I always recommend, a good cleanse, even if it's just for a week. Give yourself that. Okay. So I found out that actually one of the things that helps, and I'm sorry if the camera is shaking, one of the things that helps your body cope with stress is incorporating healthy proteins into your diet. So making sure that you have healthy protein sources, clean protein sources, which are not full of hormones and extra added chemicals. Also, if you're not really into animal protein, I love offering alternatives to make this thing easy. I found out last year that quinoa is actually a complete protein. So it has the full amino acid profile, and you can get all the same proteins that you would get from a piece of steak. So if you want to cut back on your meat, you can swap it out for some quinoa. Is there any other kinds of plant-based proteins that have the full amino acid profile? That's the one thing that I know of. Feel free to comment below if you are experiencing any of this, if it resonates with you, or if you just have something to share, maybe from your diet that you would like to share or recommend with us. And the reason that having a healthy amount of protein in your diet, and you need to have protein in your diet, it's important. It does not matter whether it comes from plants or whether it comes from animals, because the body is the building blocks of proteins are amino acids. And what proteins do is they help your body to operate the mechanisms of the communications between these organs. So your adrenal system is connected to organs in your brain, your hypothalamus and pituitary gland. And these hormones that communicate between these organs are actually controlled by the way that proteins bind with one another. So we need a certain amount of protein in our diet for our body to create neuropeptides, which are essential for our body's biological functioning. So proteins are not just for your muscles, they're important for your cognitive system, your endocrine system, your hormonal system. Proteins are vital for your whole life. So definitely make sure that you're getting enough protein. And if you're foggy brain, just try eating a bit more protein and experiment with the proteins that you are using to see how your digestive system responds to them. Alrighty. So fresh air is really going to help to ground and to balance you. And hang on one second, let me turn this off. So fresh air and sunlight, going outside, listening to the birds sing and chirp, that is really going to do wonders for your mood and for your stress levels. Being outside in general really grounds you. Let me make my adjustment here. It really grounds you. So you want to practice just exploring and being outside regularly. And I feel like that's pretty obvious. We should all spend more time outside. I personally need to spend more time outside, but I'm just so happy that I have my grounding mat, because that helps a lot. Okay, what else do I have here? So you want to be careful about high impact exercises. And that's one thing that I actually experienced in 2023. So I am a I like to consider myself a high performance athlete as a professional aerialist and instructor. I've been doing this for a long time. I have to have my body in shape in order to be able to teach, and I have to train in the gym outside of those teaching days to make sure that my joints and that all my whole musculoskeletal system is on point. And so I found that last year, my body went through this transition. I turned 36 in February. My body went through this transition where she was not having the high impact exercises, the high intensity exercises. And one thing that I'm really intuitively starting to find out about myself is that I personally have to be careful with what I'm doing with my heart rate during exercise. And you can do your own research, but I believe that as you grow older, past a certain age, elevating your heart rate beyond a certain level is not good for the stress hormones that are released in your body. And I have experienced this firsthand where my workouts have been like high intensity constantly. I try to keep my heart rate up constantly for like an hour, 2 hours. I went from doing that as a coach at Orange Theory Fitness, training with the best of them, to now where my body's like, hey girl, you're gonna have to like take a break between your sets. You're gonna have to change this workout up a little bit. So that's just been my transition as I'm in my mid 30s, going from 35 to 36. But of course we go hard because I love going hard and I love my masculine energy. I love what I'm capable of doing and what I'm capable of accomplishing through a firm intentional direction of my masculine energy. So what I'm saying is, if you find that you are on the go, you're on hyperdrive, and you feel masculinely dominated, which we talk about in several videos, you want to consider your workouts and how your workouts are contributing to your body. So there are multiple ways in which you can exercise your body without putting those stressful demands on yourself. So like I said, I like to take longer breaks between my sets. I stretch more when my heart rate is all the way up. And I won't go into the gory details of my workouts because they're pretty intense, but I'll stretch, or I will mix my days up where I'm doing more like calisthenics or slow functional exercises versus like high intensity impact training or intense calisthenics. So just be the judge of your body. Your intuition and your own internal wisdom, based on the connection and the conversation that you cultivate with yourself, will always give you the answers to what it is you need. So just be careful with the workouts because they can really wear out your adrenal system. And I got to a point where my body was like, hey, listen, we don't even want to touch weights for like 3 months. Like, I don't even want to touch weights. Just move your own body and do bar work and stretch and do yoga. But regardless of what it is you're doing, we do obviously still need to be moving our body. And I would also say that, doing cardio all the time is not enough. You do need to be doing some weight bearing exercises so that you can build muscle, and having muscle, activated muscle in your body is going to support yourself, support your body hormonally, because again, if you've got muscle, you have active protein development in your body. It's also going to contribute to supporting your system hormonally as you age. So remember that. Okay, what else do we have? So you want to decrease processed foods, because a lot of processed foods have things that will totally jack up your endocrine system. Some of these fake sugars will affect your hypothalamus, and it will mess up your insulin levels, which can lead to diabetes. Okay. So be careful with those processed foods. Be careful with gluten. That affects your digestive system. If you already have a sluggish digestive system and your body, your energy levels are already foggy, you need to cut that bread out, period, point blank. Cut it out. There's really no gentle way of saying that. So, eating fruits and vegetables. And if you want more nutritional advice, fitness advice, check out the course. So you want to manage your vices. Manage your vices, whatever that may be for you. So stop for a moment and ask yourself, what are my vices? I want you to think about it. And then once you identify your vices, you want to send your masculine energy in to get on top of that and gain control of your vices. Because when you have a vice, you are masking something. You are typically masking some kind of stress. And what that does is it creates a barrier between you and your inner work and your inner growth and development. You've got to get on top of it. All right. I feel like I'm like just being real cut and dry today. It's a mood. And it's a necessary energy sometimes when we are talking about longevity, health and longevity. I'm very passionate about this. Okay. The next thing that I have here is shadow work. You can check out the video on shadow work. It's incredibly important. I probably mentioned vices there as well, because the things that are occurring in the shadow follow us everywhere that we go. And so if we are not looking at those traumas, like the traumas I was talking about that I had to deal with earlier in my life, those things are perpetuating in our bodies and in our system as neurological patterns, hormonal patterns, and they follow us through life until we get into our 50s and our 60s. And then they start to no longer be shadows. They actually start to be a full body of dense energy that you have been walking with and ignoring for decades. Okay, so check out that previous video on creating your own happiness. It goes deep regarding these things and how you can start to clear out some of those patterns. Another thing that you can do, if you feel like, this is the last thing that I have, if you feel like you have adrenal fatigue, like you're always burnt out, or you just are really struggling to slow yourself down in life, oh, two things. Okay. I want you to pause, take a breath, assess, and then respond. Okay. So this is one of the ways that you can train your adrenal system to not just be on that automatic response, on that automatic reactive pattern. Anytime you're on the edge of making a decision that is going to send your adrenals into a negative spiral, I want you to stop, take a breath, assess, and respond. And what I have found is that this method, when I stop and I allow something to happen long enough so that I can make a good assessment of it and then respond, I find that I'm able to kind of sit back and let things play out. A lot of times, if you just back up off of a situation and you take some time to just observe it, it will play out into its natural to its natural ending. Okay. So, a lot of people, I've seen people throw, grown ass people throw tantrums and, you know, I just stand there. Sometimes all you do is just got to stand there and shake your head and just let them throw their tantrum and let them have that energy, and then they tend to work it out on their own. We are not here to be raising and carrying grown ass people. Y'all know I'm not a fan of that. We don't do it. So grounding in yourself, being comfortable with just standing and not always having to go and overextend yourself. And people, let people be adults. Let your partners be adults. Give them the honor and the dignity of figuring things out. If something is activating you in a negative way, if it is bothering you, pause, take a breath, assess, and reflect. This can also go towards, getting work done and checking off of your to-do list. A lot of times when I was younger, especially when I was younger, I would just like be on go trying to accomplish one thing after the other. Right. And I would never celebrate my wins. I would never celebrate my accomplishments. As I have learned to take pauses at the end of every project or accomplishment that I do and really just allow myself to absorb the success of that and to be grateful for what I have accomplished and created, it has allowed me to really nurture my feminine energy, because it's like eating fast. If you eat fast, you're not really going to be able to digest anything. Like, your body and your digestive tract needs time to develop. Those digestive juices have to respond to the food you're eating. Your GI system has to contract, and it only goes at a certain rate. So if you're eating, cramming, and your digestive system is going at its normal, regular pace, you're not going to digest as well as you would if you were taking your time. Your body is not going to absorb the nutrients that you would. because you're rushing and you're forcing large amounts of energy into your body, large amounts of food into your body, and chemically your body cannot keep up with that rate, which is why the bloating happens, the constipation happens, the irritable bowel syndrome happens. Like I see this all the time. I was talking to a woman the other day and she was like, "Oh, my irritable bowel syndrome, my irritable bowel." And I was like, we were having a session and I was like, "So what are you going to go home and do tonight?" We were wrapping things up and she's like, "Oh, I'm going to go home and eat and catch up with work." Very exciting. I'm just going to have my phone in front of me. And I said, "Girl, we just sat here and talked for an hour about how you are struggling to find out what is happening with your stomach and your bowels. You're going to see a doctor to figure out what is happening. And you are telling me that you're about to go home and eat your final meal of the day, which also means that is the time where consciously you are processing the whole day that you had and the interactions that you had. Like you are coming down from your day and you're going to do that while doing work with a phone screen in front of you. Like we have to really be guardians of our health and well-being. We have to be wiser than this, and we have to allow ourselves the dignity of slowing down. And so I've also found this as a professional, as a business professional, checking off of my to-do list, and also just a high performance woman. Like I get a lot of stuff done, believe me. And I find that when I am in the thick of moving throughout my day, when I have multiple, when my attention has to be divided up into multiple things, I have this natural skill that I've started to develop. I don't know if it comes from being a Virgo rising. It's a part of being a Virgo rising, but it's also a skill that I have cultivated of if there are multiple things happening at once, I have the ability to assess what is the top priority. And this is a skill that I encourage you to develop by using the activity of pausing, assessing, taking a breath, and responding. I also do think that teaching large groups, like I have my classes are always waitlisted, teaching large groups of students also helps me to assess like the priority level quickly and then move from there. So I want you as a high performing woman, if you are a high performing woman, that we're kind of getting into next week's topic, but I want you to learn how to just pause, assess, and then respond. And when you do that, you will find that the quality of your work and the quality of your day will start to improve because you are taking the time to digest your experience in that moment of your reality, and you will get more out of it because you are now taking your time and not rushing through it. So the as above is always within. The way that we are consuming life through our mouth and through our body and through all of our orifices is the same way that we are probably consuming life in our consciousness. Okay. So just think about that. And then here I have adaptogens. So if you really do feel like you're resonating with this message and you're like not shaking your head and you're like, yeah, girl, I definitely like something's going on with my adrenals. Like I really need to slow down. Like if you're still on this video, I want to put you on game to adaptogens. Okay. So adaptogens are powerful herbal supplements that you can use. There are a ton of them that are going to support your hormonal system and your neurochemical system at wherever it is naturally. So it is a balancing supplement that you can use that does not alter the processes, the natural processes of your system. They adapt to your hormone levels to support you and to sustain you. And the one that I recommend, so there are a number of them, but what I use and I have used for maybe 3 years now, I actually like to use nootropics. The nootropics that I use actually they don't all have adaptogens in them, but some of them do. If you look at the ingredients, they're all herbs. Some of them have like ashwagandha and lion's mane in them. And I have been using nootropics for a couple of years now. I'm going to place the link below. I'm not sponsored or anything, but I get a little bit back when other people try them. And I mean, these have changed the whole quality of my life as a creative, as a high functional, high performance woman, having nootropics and allowing myself to be cognitively on point has just been a game changer. So if you want to change the game of your life, I recommend them too. I'm going to place them in the link below. So finally, what is the HPA axis? So if you're here, you're feeling the scientific information. So I'm gonna leave you with this, okay? So we have our adrenals, which are on top of the kidneys, which are in our mid back. So we've got two kidneys on either side of the spine that connect to our bladder. And on top of those kidneys are these little walnut shaped endocrine organs, which the endocrine system governs your hormonal system, okay? And they are called your adrenals, okay? And your adrenals are responsible for how your body responds to stress from the external environment. There are good types of stress and there are also negative types of stress. Today, we have really been focusing on those negative types of stress that can be consequential if not being taken control of. But there are also positive forms of stress, like working towards a goal that you know that you are going to accomplish. That's a good kind of stress. A good kind of stress could be taking care of your child, watching them grow up, knowing that ultimately they will be safe, but just like the natural stress of having that motherly protective energy. It's a healthy type of stress as long as you're being, realistic and you're not letting fear be the governing factor. So your adrenal system intakes and responds to the input of stress in our bodies, okay? And it also supports with our metabolism directly. And it connects with the hypothalamus, which is inside of the brain, and the pituitary gland. And the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland, it's called the HPA axis, the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axes of your body. Okay. These three organs are a part of your endocrine system, and your endocrine system supports you with your hormone, especially as women. Okay, supports us with our hormonal fluctuations. As an overall, the endocrine system helps us with our hormonal fluctuations throughout the month. So like your actual cycle that you have, your sleep wake cycle, okay? The hypothalamus and the pituitary gland, they work in the brain together to regulate how your body is retaining fluids. It also communicates with the pancreas, which governs how your body is working with sugar and producing insulin. So if you're bloated, if you're having issues with sugar, if you have diabetes like type 2, if you are overweight, your hypothalamic pituitary gland communication is probably stressed out. And also, excuse me, cardiovascularly, they also affect your system cardiovascularly as well. So these three organs communicate to really regulate stress and how your body manages stress, whether it be by giving you high blood pressure to show you that, hey, I've got to increase the pressure in your blood to cope with how you're dealing with stress. Please check out that last video on creating happiness. I think that was a really powerful video, even though it got interrupted and split in half. Watch both parts. So yeah, I mean, it's just the body is such a dynamic space, but looking at that list of things that we can do to really start that healing, but knowing that just starting with these behavioral changes is the primary way in which we are really going to start to see results. Okay, so your mindset is going to predict your behavior, and this is the entry point. This is always the simplest, it's the simplest. Simple does not mean easy. Okay, just as a note. But once you start to practice these things, or at least start to sit with it and think about, this is something that I really need to start to prioritize and get on top of practicing, join a course, have some coaching sessions with me. I'll direct you in the way to get all that healed and leveled up. it really then begins to support you, these habits, these positive habits. So your mindset is going to affect your behavior, and your beliefs and your behavior will then determine how your body is going to respond to you and how you are dealing with your environment. So, we all want to be more feminine in our energy because it is just better for our health. It's better for our longevity. And just being aware of how we are working and interacting with this adrenal process and stress and all of these different signs and symptoms is really going to change everything. So, I want to encourage you to just be aware of the signs and the symptoms that your body is showing you and advocate for yourself. Like, genuinely advocate for yourself. Do the research, do the work, the inner work of prioritizing those shifts, especially as we enter into the spring season. This is a pivotal chapter of all of our lives, as especially as a feminine tribe and a feminine community. That turning point between the winter and the spring, and the turning point between every season, is so important that we honor that through this awareness and through this inner work and personal development. So I hope that you enjoyed this content. It has been a pleasure being here with you. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. One love. Mwah.